I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, LCSW, EMDR therapist, and mom of 3 daughters. Thank you for joining me.
Welcome to episode 55 of the Future Template Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Solo, PhD, LCSW, and I am so excited to have two special guests with me this week who are going to be talking about couples EMDR intensive, which I think is a subject a lot of people are interested in but don't know a whole lot about. So I can't wait to hear what they have to say. And so I'm going to welcome Maureen and Christina. And I first just want to thank you both for being here. This is great. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you're doing, where you are, kind of intensives in general, and then we can dive into
Thank you
the
so much
couple.
for having us. We're
So
excited to be
wherever you
here.
guys would like.
Thanks for that introduction.
I'm Maureen Bethea. I'm an
Me too.
LMFT and located in Fairfax, Virginia, licensed in Virginia and North Carolina. And I see couples and individuals treating complex developmental trauma, relational trauma, of course, provide intensives and treat a lot of high conflict couples. And so we're going to talk today, obviously, about the couples intensives, but we run a private practice in Fairfax, Virginia. We also have a business called Integrative Resource Network, which offers resources for therapists who are interested in intensives, couples, and EMDR, and some other good stuff in the EMDR and intensives world.
And I am Christina Frank, licensed marriage and family
Awesome.
therapist. Maureen and I actually co-own this private practice, Fairfax Integrative Therapy in Fairfax, Virginia. I'm also licensed in Virginia and North Carolina. Excuse me. I work with complex developmental trauma, relational trauma, high conflict couples, do a lot of premarital work kind of thing. I've been doing intensives for over a year now and doing specifically couples intensives for over a year now and have been really loving and enjoying the process. And it's a big part of the reason that Maureen and I created Integrative Resource Network is because we're really excited about intensives and have seen a huge shift in the way that we practice since integrating them into our practice. And so we want to kind of spread the word to other therapists and to people that this is a resource and an option.
Totally.
So yeah.
And I think I don't know if you guys have
Yeah.
seen this, but I feel like more and more people are directly asking me about them. Like
Yeah,
they're
I think it's a
kind of,
much
the word is
needed
getting out,
resource
which I
in the
think is
community,
really
and I think
exciting.
therapists, but clients are really seeking it
so-
out. And I know you spread the word a lot on that. It's not a hard sell. Clients want this service. It's super effective, super efficient. It's just such good work. So it's really shifted a lot of the way we practice, our burnout, our ability to see different clients and provide EMDR. It's been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I just follow up on that a little bit in terms of the burnout? How would you guys say your clinical schedule has shifted over the past, 18 months as you've been, I don't know if you're doing all intensives or how
I
have you
think the
seen
cool thing
that?
about Christina
And how's
is that we've had
affected,
different
do you think, your
experiences, so I'll let her
burnout?
speak to hers. But I do a hybrid model, so I am seeing 1 week of hourly clients or like kind of 90-minute, 60 to 90-minute sessions. And then on the off weeks, I have space for intensives up to 3 to 5 day intensives, so full day or extended sessions, just depending on how it plays out. So it's been really nice
cool.
if I have some weekly clients, hourly clients, and then I have space, and I'm booking those pretty far out. Right now, end of July, August, I'm, have a lot of those booked already. So I'm just really being able to look into the future and have those off weeks booked with intensive, mostly full day, multi-day intensives.
Oh, cool. And how many weekly clients would you
that's
say
a
you're
good
still
question.
or
Probably
every other week or whatever you're doing?
between 10 and 15, I would say, or like that kind of hourly, weekly, maybe up to 90-minute.
Okay.
And then the rest I'm booking out intensives.
Yeah, so to
Awesome.
answer your question about
Great.
the burnout, yeah, it's a huge
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah. How about you?
It's given me a lot more flexibility and control over my schedule. When I was initially trained,
Yeah.
especially in private practice, you're sort of locked into this many hours a day,
Mhm.
this many days a week. And once I started to introduce these extended sessions and intensives into my practice,
Right.
just being able to look at one week to the next in a more flexible way. What do I want my week to look like in a couple weeks, or do I feel like I need to pull back a little bit? There's just a lot more flexibility with that. So it's been hugely helpful. Maureen
Yeah.
mentioned a moment ago, our experiences have been a little bit different in the way we do it, which I think is actually really kind of cool. So I do fewer of the
Mhm.
multi-day intensives. I'll do that periodically, but I'm more heavily focused on more like, full part day or full day extended sessions or intensives. So I'll have several clients that I'll see 3 hours once a month,
Okay.
that kind of thing. Or, if I have a client that's experienced, that I
Right.
see
Cool.
weekly,
Yeah.
that has experienced some sort of recent traumatic event, a car accident, something like that, I have the flexibility to kind of add in those longer sessions. So I find I'm about the same as Maureen with regard to my sort of more traditional hourly
Yeah.
model clients, but then the rest of my week, every once in a while, again, a full day, multi-day intensive, but most of my weeks look like they're filled in with these 2 to 3 hour 4 hour chunks for ongoing clients that I just see less frequently,
Oh, cool.
or that I see as a big part of the service that I offer as adjunct therapy. So it might be a couple that's stuck on a specific thing, or it might be an
Right.
individual, like I said, maybe is seeing a different therapist for ongoing therapy, but then something happens and they just need, some EMDR, some intensives just to move through that specific thing. So that's kind of the way that my week is broken down. But again, it gives you so much more
Yeah.
flexibility with these types of models. You have so much more flexibility, which really helps you just feel like you have more
Totally.
control over your schedule. So
Yeah.
we
Absolutely.
are,
And I
yeah.
think you guys are both parents. Is that correct? Yeah. So I wonder, I mean, that's, something that I think about a lot as a parent and talk about a lot on the podcast. I'm curious, do you feel like intensives and parenting
Yeah, I
kind of
would say
align well
a
for you in terms of
resounding yes, and a
flexibility and
big part of that is
scheduling?
because, just the time. I mean, one of the reasons that there's many reasons that
Yeah.
I found clients really respond to intensives, but one of the primary reasons that clients really respond is just the time. So, I have some clients that'll drive an hour and a half to get to my office, and doing that once a week is just not a realistic thing, especially if you have, you got your own kid, they
Right.
have their own kids at home, they've got busy jobs, that kind of thing.
Totally.
So they're more willing to come during the day. Those clients that historically would have only been able to
Right.
come in the early morning or the late afternoon,
Mhm.
now they're saying, I'm only coming in once a month. I can take, I'll do 3 hours for the first part of the day. And then oftentimes
Right.
they get so much more out of it too, because then they oftentimes will just take the day off and they can do self-care things, which makes the therapeutic process so much more effective. So as a parent, then I have more control with regard to
Sure.
that, because more clients are willing to take that daytime. I can see those clients more consistently in that those daytime hours. It doesn't like bleed into the evenings. So, or weekends. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. Or
Yeah, I
weekend.
think this I was gonna say
Yeah.
scheduling is
Yeah. Yeah.
part of it,
Yeah.
but for me
Yeah.
also
That's
the
great.
burnout of like when I
And I think
see,
that
five
oh,
or
go ahead,
6 or
Maureen. Sorry.
7 clients back to back to back, and I haven't eaten and I haven't peed and I haven't
Mhm.
gotten water, and then I get home to my kids and I have 7 progress notes to write versus like I have this really powerful, fun EMDR session. It's hard work, but it's such good work. I come out more energized. My burnout is way lower. I have 1 progress note to write. It's like beautiful. I'm just like, this is a great day. Like it's just such a different feeling. So the scheduling is part of it, but also just my experience in the room, I think makes a
Absolutely.
difference for me as a parent coming home. What did that look like? My energy level at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Totally. And I find like not having to transition from person to person to
Mhm.
person help retain some of that, like some of my energy, because I've always found that very exhausting. Where it's
Yeah.
like, it's just a lot to move from one person's stuff to the next person's stuff to the next person. Yeah. And something I have found too, I'm just curious if this resonates with you guys. It's like a lot of people, 50 minutes is not enough time to really like drop into EMDR in a really meaningful
Yeah.
way. It's almost like there's always one eye on the clock. And how connected to your body can you be when you're just thinking, do we have enough time? So I feel like I've seen that a ton. I don't know if that
Yeah, we
resonates
talk
with
about
you
this a
guys.
lot of like the
The shift
paths
A
that you're
in how
able
lot.
to
people
go
process
down,
because
and
of
that
that
if clients
time.
are kind of taking a detour, oftentimes I'm like, oh, they're either there goes our opportunity, or do we want to go down this path? And instead, it's like, okay, let's see what comes up, and that there's space and there's just so much less urgency. And
Right.
yeah, the checking in, the EMDR, and then the wrapping up. I mean, how many minutes? It's what,
Yeah.
20 minutes? You get to actual, bilateral reprocessing part of it, and it's just, I mean, it's so different than an
Totally.
extended session.
I feel like client, I was saying this a moment ago,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
along that same point of like clients show up differently when they know they're going to be in there for multiple hours. Clients are, committed to the process, of course, but you can, when you've got 3-4 hours, if you're doing a full day, 6 hours with this therapist, you're showing up and like you're ready to work. You're not squishing it between meetings and that kind of thing. So that I feel
Totally.
like is another piece of it too, like making it easier for clients really to drop in and to really to turn towards some of those things that maybe are harder to turn towards when they know they have that next thing they've got to run and do. So exactly.
Right. When they're like, oh, this is my lunch hour. I had a meeting with my
Exactly.
boss before.
And for that
I have a
reason, this is
client
the cool
meeting
thing about
afterwards.
Intense.
They're
Like
like,
we do a lot of, obviously we're all EMDR providers, but outside of that, I mean, intensives are useful for so many different modalities for this. Sometimes it's just the simple fact of like giving a client more space, just giving them more space, let alone the deeper the EMDR stuff.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I think, like I've said this before on the podcast, like Francine Shapiro always intended sessions to be 90 minutes. Like that's how she designed, that's how she, I mean, and why not go longer? But like the 45-minute model from the founder of EMDR, she recognized that wasn't really, clinically appropriate. So
Totally.
we're kind of more in alignment with that intended model, Well, I am dying to hear about couples convince. So I would love to hear whatever you guys want to share about what you're doing, challenges, successes,
So a lot
anything.
of this
I
was
think people
born
would be
out of our
so
experience
interested.
with you and learning about intensives and being around other providers who, one, don't want to treat couples, don't want to treat high conflict couples. It's not in their wheelhouse or their training, which is totally understandable. And that there really is a need in the community of giving couples the time to do this work that we're
Yeah.
talking about, dropping in, having more time to process, really getting into the attachment work. So Christina and I are both LMFTs. We are known in our community for treating high conflict couples, and we're now known for treating trauma and relational trauma and doing EMDR. And so being able to bring those two things together has been really just super powerful work. So I'll let Christina talk about kind of the structure and how we do that logistically, but kind of big picture, being able to bring a couple in, and we can do the didactic part of it, the teaching the tools. We can get their attachment histories, and then we can do that next layer of work, which is peeling back the layers. What are the triggers? What are the past present connections that are impacting them? And just helping them see, depersonalize the dynamic and see that each individual is having their own internal experience and how to have empathy for one another, and then how to shift that dance, that attachment process that they're playing out. So we got really excited when we heard other people weren't into it, and that we had a thing going, that this is really in our in our wheelhouse. But then also once we started doing more and
Oh,
more of
yeah.
it, I mean, it's really
Oh,
it's
yeah.
interesting. It's really can be kind of high risk in the way that you're not quite sure what's going to happen anytime you put a couple in the room together, but it's high reward that the work is just really powerful and so impactful. And not just like, okay, they've come in and learned something, which is great, but they've actually experienced each other in a different way. So I'll let you talk about, Christina, kind of the model that we've come
Yeah.
up with and how we lay it out. It's super flexible, but we have kind of found a structure that really works for folks. Yeah.
I'll just say real quick, I'm sure you have no problem getting referrals, because I'm sure people are dying to have someone it just seems like it's such a
Yeah, it's
no-brainer
interesting. If people are
terms
into,
of from like a
retreats or
marketing
workshops, we've
perspective,
gotten
like
lots of,
I would
premarital folks are really looking for like, okay, what can we go and
Mhm.
do to prepare for our marriage and play out these dynamics? So that's been really good. I think it is interesting to get
Yeah.
the EMDR part of it. So we do there's couples intensives and there's couples EMDR intensives. And some folks who are more unfamiliar with EMDR, they've never experienced it. Only one partner has experienced it. wanting people to feel comfortable with what the process looks like or how it can help is where we really need to do the marketing or more explaining part of it.
Yeah. So the way sort of as a baseline, we start with this, we sort of have this 3-day model. And as Maureen said, it can be flexible case by case, what the circumstances are of the situation. But generally we have this, we start as a baseline with this 3-day model where that first day is really about joining, getting to know attachment history, getting to know the couple's dance, the couple's cycle. And then you get a lot of that, like, didactic stuff, a lot of the learning stuff, right? So we're talking about healthy tools of community, all the standard stuff you'd see in couples therapy, right? So the healthy tools of communication and I statements, feelings, language, all that great stuff. The second day is where we get into the meat of that deeper layer. And that is where if the couple is open to it, obviously we would contract with them. But if the couple is open to it, we would incorporate EMDR. But even if a couple doesn't feel, or one member of the couple doesn't feel comfortable with it, we can do that deeper layer of like really helping that couple to understand how they're impacting each other and what things they brought to the table into the relationship in the first place and what things they can be doing. And it's really through that felt sense piece of it, of like really learning, really working on helping the couple to understand, to see, to hear, to understand each other. And it helps to depersonalize each other's behavior and hopefully decrease some of that reactivity if that's what might be there. And then the third day is really like kind of bringing it all together. The nice thing about, so going to that second day, the nice thing about the EMDR, incorporating EMDR in, if people are open to it, is that it really, like Maureen said, the potential for reward is so incredible. Like witnessing your partner, they see, you see on the surface this trigger, like my husband didn't empty the dishwasher, whatever it is. And as you're watching your partner peel back the layer and follow that memory network back to this thing that happened when they were a child, right? It's so powerful in the room to have to create the space for the witnessing partner in that process, right? And so that second day is really, it's really like I said, it's the meat of it. It's so beautiful and it's so powerful and it's so exciting. And so that's kind of our 3-day, the sort of the overarching model. But each goal target is different from one couple to the next. So you might have a couple where there's a betrayal, right? Infidelity or financial betrayal. And so maybe that's what we're talking about in that middle day. We get a lot of premarital couples. So that middle day really is, again, it's more about that depersonalization to help prevent any of the resentment or any, some of those unhealthy cycles that can build over time. It could be a couple that's just trying to work on communication. So we really tailor it depending on what each couple is presenting with and each couple is needing. But that's the general framework. But so I'll do one more little tail end to my rambles here. And we talk about this, actually, we have a training in our integrative resource network. We offer a training with this. There's sort of different models that you can use, right, with regard to incorporating EMDR into your couples therapy, right? Whether it's doing a witnessing model where one partner is witnessing the other partner and then you switch. And then there's obviously pros and cons to that. There's also models where they're doing it together at the same time. So it really depends one couple to the next on what it is. That's part of the assessment process, right? It's like what we feel like would be a good fit from one couple to the next, but there's different ways to do it. But with the intensive, you have all this beautiful time to really get to know the couple, and you have all this beautiful time to really help them and support them in working through something fully, so.
Right. Yeah, I think I have a sense, but I think it would be really interesting to talk in more depth about kind of the difference between that witnessing model and then a couple processing together. Like what might be the circumstances in which you do one versus the other? Like what does that look like on a practical level?
Yeah, so
you want to
go ahead.
fascinating.
You can tell that we're excited about it.
We're excited. The concurrent model, so when both couples are processing together, we really see that as when the couple has had a difficult experience or experienced a trauma together, but in different positions. So it can be a car accident, it can be a miscarriage, it can be a traumatic birth, it can be something that they both were involved in, a situation with your in-laws or whatever, that you're both involved in, but were in different roles. And so that model typically requires, an RTEP or a PRESI, like a recent traumatic experience, ongoing stress protocol, because both people are so like more the GTEP, like a group model, but that you're using it with a couple, so that both individuals are doing their own processing at the same time, and then you're checking in with them at the end, and then doing integration together so that they can talk about
That would be the
their
IGTP for
experience. Oh,
the
sorry, I
scaling.
would get the
Yeah, it's
acronyms
IG.
mixed up. Yeah, I know. The witnessing model is great if you
All
want
these
to
acronyms, but yeah,
desensitize a
right.
trigger,
Yeah.
or there's more of a betrayal wound where one person is more like the hurt party. And so that each person has their own chance to go back and do those past present
Okay.
connections. And the other person is the witness, and really trying to hold space for them to have an empathetic, kind, compassionate, grounded presence while their partner is doing their work and making some of those past present connections and really working through their hurt feelings, and whatever else might be attached to that. There is also an option for couples that are really escalated, really unsafe, have a difficulty regulating in the room, have a difficulty utilizing the tools that you're teaching them in the room, to split the couple as well. And I kind of see in my head is it's almost like the preparation. It's almost like phase 2 prepping by doing individual EMDR to be able to hold space to do it together. That they need to be more grounded, have more of a window of tolerance to desensitize some of those triggers before they're even safe enough to do maybe concurrent or witnessing couples EMDR. So vulnerable, right? And so, yeah, part of our assessment
it's
and
so
what we train
vulnerable, I would
people on is
imagine.
how to make those determinations. And what are the things you're screening for? Is this couple safe for witnessing? Do they need some individual tools and resources first? And how do you make that clinical decision point? My worry is, as a clinician, that when people say, I do couple EMDR, it means they split a couple and do EMDR. And we really want people to make it as a clinical decision point, not what the therapist was comfortable with or what seems easiest, but how do you really determine what's most clinically appropriate to integrate EMDR into the model versus like I'm doing couples therapy and I slap some EMDR on there. Like, how do you integrate EMDR in the AIP lens, as part of the process and make that decision in a more holistic way?
I feel like that's a lot of what we see. The couples EMDR that we've come across is it is that you're doing the EMDR separately and coming back together, which obviously has its place and also is useful and helpful. But again, like Maureen said, the goal, the potential for reward really is if they're able to sit in the same room together and be witnessing or participating actively in each other's healing. So.
And if they were, say, it was not like a really high conflict situation in which you guys would think that separating them was needed, would the people who are doing it that way, is it just sort of like, and then you come back together and tell the other person about
We've
it?
learned a few lessons along the way. So you're saying if we did it separately? Yeah.
Yeah. Just like, what would be the... I know you don't, unless it's...
Yeah, so I've had some couples that come in that are really high conflict and have, tons of historical wounds, but also present day wounds. And they just have a hard time even tolerating being in a couple session, being in the room together. So separating them has been really helpful in terms of just desensitizing some of those triggers, doing their own work, being vulnerable away from their partner. It is really powerful. Where we've learned some lessons in is, what do you do next, right? So you've done this powerful work with people separately, and I've made the mistake, and I talk about this, where one person was very open and willing and able to bring their work back into the couple dynamic, and I allowed that to happen, and the partner was not in a place was not grounded enough to hear that vulnerability. And so I've learned, and I try to help my consultees and people now see that even if one person is doing that work or is more accessible in that way, you've got to be really careful with that integration, because ideally they're able to bring it back. They can share openly. They can validate each other's experience, that it's this really nice moment. But most oftentimes, especially early in the work, that partner has a hard time holding that space, or they're working on different things, or, they aren't quite ready to do that level of vulnerability. So ideally, they do the individual work and then they integrate these beautiful changes that they've made, either explicitly or, in their own bucket. But there are sometimes some And I've learned, some growing pains in helping do that integration part of it. So it's a little tricky.
Sure.
Yeah, and one
Yeah.
part of like, I
And
really
having
want to
like
share this, and we talk about is, do
guardrails
you
in
think
place
your partner is in a place? Does it
for,
feel safe
yeah.
enough? Does it feel like you can do this? And most oftentimes it's like, well, we need a few more tools in the tool belt, or we need to make sure we do this in a
Which is
boundary
why
way.
you made the clinical decision to split them in the first place. I mean, theoretically, if they were
Yeah.
able right
Yeah.
away to come back in and do that beautiful integration work in that ideal way, then one would argue they are appropriate potentially for the conjoint, the concurrent, right? So usually you would need a little bit more time. It's a little bit of a slower process, and that's the nuance of it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the same therapist would be doing the processing with each member of the couple, so you have
Yeah.
hopefully a sense of,
Yeah.
are they ready
Yeah,
to
we
share
really
this with
encourage
each other?
people to
Not that you're
stay in
always
their
going to know that, but
wheelhouse,
that
and
would
I
be
think
the
there's
idea.
another
Yeah.
clinical
Okay.
decision point around I'm splitting this couple to do couples EMDR versus I'm now doing individual EMDR. And where is that line? And I think that can be tricky because once you hold someone's story, once you've done
Right.
really great EMDR work with them and say, well, okay, maybe it's more individual work, that can be hard for a client to hear. So being really intentional about contracting, this is why
Mhm.
I'm splitting you. This
Sure.
is what the intent is, and this is kind of the boundary of when, if it's going into more family of origin or historical stuff that's important, it's going to positively impact you guys as a couple to do that work, but really that feels more in that individual bucket. I think couples therapists in general, need to make sure they have a good secret keeping policy and boundaries about the individual sessions they're doing and all of those things. And I think that applies, but even more to when you're diving into this beautiful EMDR work, but then you're the relationship with your client.
Right. Because I can imagine, and I wonder if this is something you guys have seen, like an EMDR therapist who doesn't have a whole lot of
Sure,
training in
sure.
couples work, being like, oh, sure, I can do
It's
EMDR.
it really
I could
yeah,
see going
absolutely. And it is so much more, and it's
badly.
just so many
Have you
details
seen
like
that
that as we
happen?
started doing it, really thinking about like, okay, when we are doing the concurrent, where is the witnessing partner sitting? And how do we use the witnessing partner to, if we want to use the witnessing partner to be, participating in the cognitive interweaves, and what does the resourcing look like? The resourcing looks very different from the couple dynamic. There's just so many little clinical decision points along the way. It's not just a matter of I know how to do EMDR. Let's get two people in a room together and do it like that. There's just so many more details in it. So
Sure. And you would want the resourcing, I imagine, to be tailored towards things that are relevant for the presenting issues, right? And for the couple. I mean, I'm sure there are ways, you can have a resource of, my cat, and I love my cat, and I can imagine petting my cat, but also I can see like what's a really positive experience you guys have had together that you both remember.
that's exactly
And that would
right.
be a very different
Yeah,
kind
and
of,
in that, the resourcing is
shared
also used as
resourcing.
assessment, right? So you're
I could see,
assessing in the resourcing. It's also the positive affect tolerance. Here we are, we're sitting in the mess of it together.
Sure.
Can we also hold on to moments where we do feel connected, right? You're assessing, and so you're resourcing, but you're also assessing, and then you're doing sort of what you described, sort of a couple connection around this shared memory that we have together, and how do we make that bigger and enhance that, right? Can a couple tolerate these things, right? And so that's part of the clinical decision of like, when are we ready to move on from resourcing? But it's also part of the clinical decision of like, maybe this is a couple that cannot tolerate being in this space together safely. And maybe that's a couple that we need to do the splitting up, at least initially, and coming back together. And then there's all these clinical decision points, as Maureen was saying earlier, all these clinical decision points around what that looked like. So.
Oh, so interesting. About the witnessing model, let's say it's an infidelity situation. Would each partner have the opportunity to process and witness, or is it, say, just the wronged party who does the processing?
Yeah, we always try to balance it. I mean, that's the
I don't know,
thing.
how
And
have
this
you
is
done
what we
that?
know
I'm
to be true
curious.
about infidelity work, right? Like you have to make space for both people's narrative in order to heal, and what that looks like looks different for every single couple. But yeah, that's the idea. Or if, an infidelity could potentially be an IGBT, or sorry, the group EMDR. That's also when you're not actually having to say things out loud. If it's a couple where you really risk while someone's processing, the witnessing partner can't hold it and can't tolerate it, that's the clinical decision, right? Like, is this something we need to do separately? Or is this something where it's like, okay, we want them in the room together, doing it together if possible.
Right.
What if we shift to a model where they're not saying things, they're not talking out loud as they're processing, right? But ideally, when we're doing the idea is when we're doing the concurrent, when we're doing the witnessing model, that it would alternate. Yeah.
Right. So it would also be the other person's
And
experience.
it could be the other person's experience of
yeah,
how the
that's
affair
really interesting.
happened, but that
Yeah.
that would feel a little trickier to me than what's it like day to day when you see your partner so sad or so
Right.
upset. Desensitizing the day-to-day triggers, sitting in your own shame of having hurt your partner.
The shame piece of it
Yeah,
is
so it can
that's
be
the
the
hugely
present day, you know.
Right. Right. The content is
Yeah,
not
yeah, when
the
you come
issue.
home now and
Like
if
the
your partner
content of
cried
the
on the
affair
couch and
or
you
the
know that you've hurt
infidelity.
them, and most
Right.
oftentimes that hurting partner, the offending partner, has a really hard time. They want it
Right.
to go away, they want to fix it, they want to sweep it, and what's it like to sit in the space of this hurt?
Sure.
So a lot of the work we do there is like increasing window of tolerance, desensitizing those triggers, increasing accountability and space for repair.
just even that, like, that part of the repair, the healing process of witnessing your partner, the hurt partner, the partner that offended. Sometimes it looks like dismissiveness, right? It looks like
And of course, I
maybe
bet that's a
potentially it looks
fuzzy
like, oh, I just
line
want this to
too.
go away, but then giving that partner the opportunity to really articulate and share and be vulnerable with it is, I feel so much shame, I feel so much pain, I feel so much, just even sometimes so powerful for the partner that's been hurt just to see that in the other partner. I got twisted on my words there, but hopefully that made sense.
Sure. Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. And just even providing a structured, safer space
Right.
with the therapist
Yeah.
guiding the process, they can't have those kinds of conversations on their own, right? They're not moving through those shame blocks, all that hurt, because they just, immediately shut down, defend, whatever.
Yeah.
But coming into a space where it's like, this is what we're doing and I'm guiding you, it's so powerful.
Exactly.
It's a structured environment instead of like, let's talk about this, just the two of us. That can be very, unproductive at best. Would imagine. So what are some, without, of course, like, divulging any confidentiality, like what are some of the like outcomes that you have seen? Like what can you expect at the end of, say, a 3-day couples intensive? I mean, I know it's all over the map, but I'd just be interested in, what have you noticed?
That's a
that
great
surprised
question. I
you,
think
or
some of the work that I've done, especially with some of the more long-term folks that have historical trauma and present day trauma, what I've really done is taken the edge off in the present so that they can access couples therapy in a different way. So if I can get back in my window of tolerance to even use I statements and reflective listening and all these things we teach couples, but in the moment, they can't access it because they're not in their window. They're all in their, negative cognitions, and they're flooded and triggered
Totally.
and all the things. So
Right.
I think it's been really helpful. The work isn't done after 3 days for those couples that have a ton of historical stuff they're bringing in. But it's been really powerful for me that they can just show up in the room. I can feel it. They walk into the room and it's a different couple because they are not on edge. They're not at the edge of their window. And all those survival skills coming into play immediately. We just have more bandwidth to do the learning and growing and empathy, reflection stuff, attunement stuff together. So
yeah, that's such a good point, because I can imagine for couples who go into sort of a traditional couple therapy format, it's like, use these skills.
yeah,
They're
or
nowhere
they can
near
use them in
being
the
able to
room,
use
but the
those
second
skills.
they're
Like, it
at
sounds great
home
on paper,
and their kids are yelling or there's things going on, it's hard. So then you spend weeks and hours and months of like trying to build and, okay, did you take a time out and did you use a nice statements? And really at the end of the day, unless they can be in their window, they can feel that attunement, they can access the tools. It's just really grueling work, high dropout rate, really tricky to keep folks holding the hope, not letting ambivalence creep in. So really it feels empowering to help take that edge off to build some resources there. And then they can just use couples therapy. And then couples therapy is more productive. And then the EMDR can be like, okay, here's this historical stuff creeping in, or this really feels like a family of origin attachment thing. let's go do some work there. But at least the couples therapy, the load had lightened a bit.
Totally. Oh, yeah. Like from like a polyvagal perspective, like they can't be in like, fight, flight when they're
That's a
trying to
beautiful
use
way to
the
put it.
skill.
Yeah,
They have to have some
exactly. Yeah.
capacity to feel connected to the other person,
Yeah.
and I just think about that with kids all the time too, because you're always hearing, at school and whatever, like use your breathing. I'm like, my child is 7, like she
Yeah, they're
just
not
threw a
in the
chair across
window.
the
They don't have
room.
any
Like she's
access
probably not
to
going
it.
to
Yeah.
access her skills right now. You know, right? But we have this expectation of people when they're escalated that somehow they should be able to
I
do
totally
that,
agree
and
with
that
that.
just
And I
sets
think
people up
from a
for failure,
parenting
I think. Like
perspective, from a
adult and
couple's
shoulders,
perspective, I feel like we're always being told these tools, and they're great tools. They're wonderful tools and resources. But at the end of the day, if we're triggered, if we can't access them, then they kind of become useless, So that's what I think is so important about doing, our work as adults and, and that really powerful couples where I agree with everything that Maureen said. And the other thing that I found really cool is my premarital work has totally shifted as well, because again, along that same line of thinking, so many people come to premarital work just to like, to learn those basic tools of community. They're in their honeymoon period and just kind of make sure that we know that we got the tools in our tool belt. And I say, oh, great, here are the tools for your tool belt. And also, here's what I'm noticing in your dance. Right now, these are little things, but over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, these things are going to start to build up. Let's build some insight into that. And in that 3-day model, that's one of the big things that I found so powerful is even couples that come in and they're like in that honeymoon period that they're still able to access those underlying patterns. They're still able to access their own stuff that's coming into their relationship. They're able to desensitize some of the things that's already building in their relationship, or they're able to heal past hurt so they show up in their relationship differently. So it's like a holistic approach to the premarital process. And so that's the part that I think has been really, really powerful for me is like, there's so much change, so much healing that can happen in such a short period of time when incorporating this work.
And just like the ripple effect of a couple starting their marriage from that place and like how that extends out to their whole family system. Like that's one of the things I think about with EMDR all the time is like an intensive. If we can provide so much healing for this person in a short time, as opposed to it taking a year, what are the knock-on effects in their life that result from that, and how much less hurt and pain will result from whatever they're dealing with if you can just do it now. Like there's so many reasons I think that the intensives are like a time and money saving model, like all around. Like if you can go back to work next week instead of in 6 months, that's good. That's really good. Wow, this is so interesting. I could like ask you more and more questions about this, but I do want to ask about your the integrative resource network stuff. And I've seen a few things on Instagram that you guys are doing, but I'd love to hear more about
so we're building our library. The idea behind Integrative Resource Network is that it's a place for clinicians to come and essentially learn and expand their practice. We are working on, CEUs. We have one of our trainings you can get EMDR credits for, but it's more than that, right? So we have right now we're primarily, again, as I said, we're building our library. So we're primarily focused on intensives and couples and EMDR. I could talk a little bit about the intensive stuff and then Maureen, I can kick it to you for the couples stuff, but, so we have this intensive startup package that we're really excited about, which, the 3 components of it are an 80-minute webinar, and then we also have a workbook and we have a template packet. So the webinar kind of walks you through some of the stuff that we've been talking about today, right? Like what are the models of, the scheduling stuff. And actually, I don't know if we went too much down this, but, the scheduling stuff and the price and the why we made the decisions that we made and what are our personal experiences with it kind of walks you through that. The workbook is meant to be something that you're kind of working through. It's like this 40-page document where you're really working through of like, I'm having a vision where I'm thinking I want to add this. What does that look like? Why am I doing this? What is the service that I'm offering? Is this a specialty? How would this add to my practice? What am I hoping my clients will get out of this? And then building from that, again, you're thinking about your schedule. What do you want your schedule to look like? Do you want it to be more like Maureen's, where you're doing more of those multi-day intensives? Do you feel like you want to just do more of those 3-4 hour types of sessions, that kind of thing. So you're thinking about your schedule, you're thinking about your logistics, you're thinking about your fees. And then it works all the way through to marketing. It helps you develop a marketing plan and how to sell yourself. And then the template packet is actual template, like email templates that we use to collaborate with other providers, as well as emails that we send to our clients during and after the process, as well as a little bit more marketing materials with that. So it's actual like examples of what we actually use. So you can buy these together. You can buy them separate. But it's just it's just something we're really excited about. It's a super great resource for any clinician that's starting to think about wanting to offer this into their like kind of one-stop shop. So yeah.
Really. Yeah. That's awesome. And I'll definitely put the link in the show notes.
Yeah. And then Maureen, I don't know if you want to talk
so
about
excited.
Yeah,
Really
we
quick.
have one on-demand training that's approved for NJS CEUs on the frameworks. So the witnessing, the concurrent, and the individual couples EMDR. So that's a 3 CEU training, and we're doing one in September. That's a 6 CEU training that'll have more videos and more clinical case examples. So the frameworks, but also getting into more of the clinical nuance. We also have some really great, Christina especially has these really great resourcing tools to use for couples in EMDR of how to use container with a couple, safe place, like Carolyn, exactly what you said, or what are positive and safe experiences that you've had a couple, and we resource those. So we have some examples in those trainings. So yeah, really trying to create a space because I think people are starting to do more couples EMDR, but I don't know that there's a lot out there in terms of how to do it or how to make those really thoughtful clinical decision points and working through an assessment of how is this a couple appropriate for which framework.
I really appreciate like you shared about the clinical decision point because of course that's crucial for EMDR, but with individuals. But when you're talking about like 2 individuals coming together as a couple, the dynamic and like the layers, like, I'm just sort of imagining the complexity. Like it is a different animal in a lot of ways, and you're not asking the same questions. You're not, moving in the same direction based on one person's response. So I think that I just, like I said earlier, I can totally imagine.
Yeah, there's so much
I'm an
more
EMDR
now you've got
therapist. Sure,
2 people's nervous systems in the room. You know what I mean? It's just,
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's so awesome that you guys are doing this because there's such a need. But it is a highly, you need to be highly skilled in a lot of areas, I think. And that's something that I think it's always important for us to remember that, we've been doing EMDR for a while and it can feel sort of like routine almost. But whenever you add another piece in, whether it's couples or addictions or whatever, we do need to build additional skill, and I think sometimes that gets lost in the weeds a little bit. Like I did basic training, basic training is great. And there's a reason why, to get certified, to become a consultant, whatever, you have to training. It's not a one size fits all model.
Yeah.
And we do a lot, but we
training
also,
is not all it is.
We know
It's
what's
not all there
outside
is.
the scope. So if a couple comes in and the main presenting issue is active substance abuse, right? I'm not going to do individual sessions with that person because I can treat it as a symptom of complex PTSD. But if the goal is to reduce substance use and how it's impacting this relationship, that is not my wheelhouse. I've done a training, but that's not my specialty. And I am perfectly willing to refer and to coordinate care and to do everything possible. But I think it's to your point of knowing what's in your scope, and couples is a specialty, and you can't plop 2 people in the room and just do EMDR, right? And so knowing that dance and knowing what your scope is and when you need to refer out. And man, I love consultation. I get consultation as I'm an approved consultant, and I still get my EMDR consultation because, especially if you're doing intensives, you need that toolbox. You need a range of protocols and approaches, and it's such good, powerful work. And you've got to feel like you know what you're doing in the room, or your nervous system is going to show up in that process. That's right. Yeah.
Well, exactly. It's 3 nervous systems in the room, right?
Yeah.
And just not feeling so isolated in the work that we do, consultation for that reason alone is so valuable. we can get really like tunnel visioned about the work that we do and not really take a step back and see the bigger picture. Like that happens to me all the time. And yeah, I'm very grateful for the consultants I work with for that reason. And sometimes you just need someone to gently be like, I think maybe you need
zooming
to
out.
try
What's your
something
case
different or whatever.
conceptualization? What's the
You
goal
can get so
here?
stuck in
What are you
the-
contracted for? Yeah, it's super helpful.
Right. Exactly. And I think with intensive, one of the great things about them is the treatment plan is like by necessity contained. And so there is a frame in some ways that you're coming in with, but you still, like this happens to me all the time in intensives, you still have to make sure you are like, what is the goal for these 3 days? It's not going everywhere and all over the place, you know? And if that's what's happening, we need to stop, assess, like, okay, is this where we want to go? Do we want to move to like a more frequently meeting model or whatever? But, you know, there is a reason why we treatment plan.
And that's one
I
of
think,
the
look
big things
different
that we talk about
when you're doing an intensive.
you know, when we're training other clinicians as well, is you got to be you got to put the bumpers up. You have to be targeted. It's really easy to go here, there, and everywhere because people are complex and couples are complex. And so it's really important to say, okay, this is what we're contracting to work on specifically. And when other stuff comes in, you're tagging it, you know, for future work if they want to do it. But in the meantime, this is what we need to do. So.
And I think that helps the clients feel like you're competent. It helps to portray that sense of like, I put the, you know, I, like you said, I put the bumpers up and I hold it to them. You know, I think
and to their feeling of success and walking in. If you're going here, there, and everywhere, you're not able to accomplish as much. You know what I mean? So if you're really targeted that we're going to work on this specific thing, and then they leave having worked on that specific thing, then they feel success. They feel healing. So
totally. Yeah. Well, what else would you guys like to share that we haven't touched on? Is there anything else that I find so interesting?
Share about what? Just in general? Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Well, if there's anything you feel like I didn't ask you.
No, I think from my perspective, we hit on everything. You know, we love our clinical practice. We love seeing clients. We love working with other providers. And we're really excited about this resource that we're now offering to other clinicians, in the hope that, you know, the more people that are able to help more people more efficiently, the better, right? So we're super excited about Integrative Resource Network as a resource for providers who are thinking about couples in EMDR, who are thinking about intensives, and hopefully getting into some other things at some point soon. So,
yeah. That sounds so awesome. I am definitely going to.
Yeah, we're figuring out Instagram.
I thought you were figuring it out. Oh, this is so cool. I didn't even know you guys were just. Oh, yes. It's a whole world. Yeah. I will say it's been very helpful for me. I'm just telling you, it might feel like it's kind of a learning curve, but then you sort of
know. We'll keep pushing through.
You know. Anyway, but it's been helpful. I don't know if
it's there.
I don't know if I like it exactly, but
you can find us on Instagram.
Yeah. But yes.
Great.
Well, I'm going to put all your website and everything in the show notes, all the different ways people can find
I'm not
you.
a consultant.
And Maureen, do you do? Christina, are you a consultant?
Yes, I do individual and group consultation for folks working towards certification. I also have advanced groups for people that are close to certified or certified, but still are more in like the case conceptualization and stuck. You know, they're kind of moved past the understanding the basic protocol. So I have different levels of groups. So and I'm starting to help people picture intensives through through consultation as well of how they can integrate it into their practice. So yeah, super excited. I just want to say how much you talk about intensives and the benefits and kind of identifying the fears and the myths and the stuck points. And I know it's different in different parts of the country and for different populations, but I just want to say in our area, from our experience, clients really want this service and they really respond to it. And for me as a therapist and for my clients, it's been a game changer. For my long-term clients, for my new clients, it's just been clients want this service. They want to feel better. You know, they want their relationships to be better. And so I appreciate you speaking to those those things that I think are really important. We get hung up sometimes as therapists on not wanting
Oh, yeah.
to oversell something or feeling weird about offering a new service, but it's such a powerful model. I love it.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know. It sounds like you had a similar experience. Like, I
People
don't
seek
find
that
that the
to your
the
point earlier,
selling of
like
it is
people
hard.
we're talking about
Yeah.
before, like we're
You
getting
know,
so
it
many
is.
of these. I'm like, I need more people to offer intensive. This is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, please do this. Like and you, even someone who's never heard of it, if you just give like a little 2-minute spiel about why it's
No, it's
useful,
not at all.
you're
And
like,
I
oh,
find
that
I
makes so much
completely
sense. Like,
agree.
it's not a hard
And that's
sell.
been one of the fun things about it is
Really
I
not.
did, when I first was getting into it, I was like getting my game face on of like, what is this going to look like? And really realizing you just a couple of sentences with client and they really do. Most clients really respond for their schedule, for the efficiency of the process, for their relation. Like there's just so many reasons that it's beneficial. And that, yeah, Maureen and I have
Great
been, I'm speaking for you a little
Yeah.
bit here, but it's been really fun consulting with, we both can, providing this feedback for other clinicians and getting them excited about the process feels really good and really empowering. And it's been really, really fun. I know.
Yeah. I think it is really empowering
Yeah.
to tell therapists there are other ways to work. Like, it doesn't just have to be the way that we learned
Yeah.
in grad school, that insurance companies tell us is the only way.
I think what's
I
important
think
about it too
that
is
is
like
very liberating
much like
for
you just
people.
because you do EMDR
Um,
doesn't mean that you can just pick two people up and plop in a room, right? It's also, it's not just about extending the time. You have to be thoughtful and intentional about how you're doing your intensives. So it's not just about like
Totally.
lengthen the session next week. It's that thing again. It's like, what are we doing? What's our goals here? So but once you figure that out, once you figure that part out, you kind of shift your mindset around your case planning. Really, the door is open so wide up for you. So we're all getting the word out. It's good stuff.
Yeah. So
We really
we're all getting
appreciate,
the word out.
being able to
Great.
be a part of your podcast.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, this is wonderful. People are going to love this episode. I just know it. Well, I already talked about it this week, and someone already said that you
cool.
guys were going to be on, and I've had 2 people reach
That's
out to me
awesome.
saying, I can't wait to hear about couple. So
That's awesome. Well, if anyone
so,
has any questions
I have
or
a feeling it's
anything,
going to be a
please,
popular one.
don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach out through our social media, through our website.
Yeah,
We love, like we
absolutely.
said, we love talking to other providers and providing, consultations and feedback around the intensive stuff. So
Well, I'll make sure all the ways to get in touch with you are in the show notes. I'm also going to include the bio that you guys sent me there as well.
Perfect.
So everyone knows how to find you and reach you and use you as a resource. So thank you so much. This was great. I really appreciate your time, and take good care, everybody.